So, to close out the week, there was a report that was published that's detailing Nintendo's plans around Switch 2 production. Specifically, that they may have been lowballing everyone with the forecast that they issued at this recent investors report of 16.5 million systems. And if they are aiming to go well above that, you would have to assume that they have something to push that hardware. And yeah, that means that they would have some pretty compelling software that they'd be showing off. And I wanted to go over what exactly we could be looking at with that here today. So if you guys enjoyed the video, hit the like button, subscribe if you're new. So this was a report that was issued by Takashi Machizuki, which he seems to either be like in the good graces for Nintendo fans or is like public enemy number one. I mean, it's kind of the same way when he talks about Sony as well, depending on if Sony has to step away from PSVR 2, for example, cut down on production. That was an entire thing. Here, though, it's more positive news for Nintendo, so people seem pretty happy with what he's saying here. So I mentioned that Nintendo currently has their forecast set at 16.5 million Switch 2 systems for this fiscal year, and that would push the system up over 36 million systems by the end of March 2027. And that would put it on track for a pretty substantial 2 years. I mean, we've been looking near 40 million systems in 2 years. That is quite impressive for being the most expensive system that Nintendo has ever sold. But what if it actually ended up being slightly more than that? So this we can see again from Bloomberg, Takashi Machizuki. Nintendo has asked partners and suppliers to assemble about 20 million Switch 2 consoles in the year through March, roughly 20% more than the public sales outlook it issued earlier this month. People familiar with the matter said. The latest production volume plan is not final and may be revised depending on demand. And that to me is the biggest thing here, of course, is it's at least the plan for now until it's not, and it will indeed come down to how much demand there is for the system. And that's going to certainly be tested here pretty soon. Next week, the Switch 2 will go up in price in Japan. And it's not even like a little price increase, it's quite substantial. It'll actually make the Switch 2, the Japan only system that I think has been selling a ton of units in Japan, more expensive than the PS5 Japan only system. So it's no longer like the cheapest flagship model then in Japan. So I'm going to be really curious to see what that does to the sales volume there. Now in the US, it won't be until September. So they still have basically the entire summer to continue selling Switch 2 systems. And that could be part of this. Like, hey, we're going to ramp up production now, especially as we head towards the holiday season, just to try to sell more and more of them, because what have they seen so far in Japan over the last couple of weeks? They have a surge right now in demand ahead of the price increase, as you'd sort of expect. But this past Famitsu sales charts, more than 200,000 Switch 2 systems sold, and I think we're going to see a similar number, provided there's enough stock, of course, when the next sales report comes out in Wednesday or Thursday of next week. We could also be seeing Nintendo through this report maybe stockpiling some Switch 2 systems with everything that's been happening around the DRAM crunch, even though prices are going up in the background. And then as we're seeing here, just with prices in general for consumer side, this might be the best price that Nintendo thinks they can get for components going forward, at least for the next year or so. And maybe they're thinking, you know what, it's right here. Let's go ahead and put the extra orders in. Let's somewhat stockpile these systems before prices continue to go up, maybe into 2027. But of course, Bloomberg does then link it to the idea that there must be some pretty good, like some pretty compelling software coming up soon. And we are sort of expecting a direct in June. So, I mean, we'll probably have one in the next, I'll say 4 weeks. All right. I'm kind of thinking the week after the current run of different showcases or events currently happening with we know Sony, then Summer Game Fest, then Microsoft. So potentially that week following Microsoft's event is sort of what I'm envisioning for a direct to happen, that the second week in June. And that's when I think they'll start setting up many things, of course, for the end of 2026. But also, I'm wondering if Nintendo will indeed move to announce stuff that is potentially more than a year out. All right. And I think that'll come down to, naturally, when they have some of their already announced games like Pokemon coming up. So like this is one of the infographics that'll occasionally be posted up over on Reddit. I think it's from I Eats Dragons. They do this quite often after there is like a big direct that happens. They'll start throwing some of the games in here to line it up. Unfortunately, it's been a little while. Remember the last partner event that happened that they went ahead and rearranged some of this was in February, but it's been a while since there was a big general direct. It's been more than 250 days, I think. It's a while, right? So I guess next month we should see this whole thing get rearranged again, but at least gives us an indication as to kind of what we have coming up here. With if you look at it, sure, we have Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. That's interesting just to see that series continue on the Switch 2, and we know the third one I think is getting ready for a reveal here pretty soon, and that will naturally start to push interest in the Switch 2. But otherwise, like Yoshi just came out. We're looking for June, we're looking towards Star Fox, of course. That's not on here. We know Splatoon Raiders is coming up here in the summertime, Rhythm Heaven. But I think a lot of people are curious about a couple of titles, even that haven't necessarily been announced. Ocarina of Time Remake is the big one. I think that will drive a ton of Switch 2 sales. And I know it's a remake of a game that has been out for decades now, but it is, I mean, people look at it as the greatest game of all time. You know, it's if you look at this, like any of the review sites where you can sort by highest rated ever, it's usually up there at the top. It's number one or like two or three or something, depending on if they grade based on number of reviews, but it's up there. And I think it's gonna be quite interesting to see what it looks like, of course, what changes they make, if any, and there's a lot of conversation around that. But just the name alone is going to have a steady pull for older gamers, especially ones that have that nostalgia for that N64 time period, and they see Ocarina of Time Remake. You're probably going to have a lot of people go out and pick it up. And now more than ever, the Zelda franchise is just popular. It's more popular, I think, than it's ever been, coming off the heels of Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. Ocarina of Time should just be a very different kind of game compared to those. It'll be more traditional dungeon-based Zelda. But I actually prefer those, to be honest. So I'm certainly looking forward to the idea of Ocarina of Time Remake. But then you have like Fire Emblem. I think the Duskbloods also has a chance to pull in people who wouldn't normally pick up a Nintendo system because it's the big new FromSoft game. And if it ends up being like high quality and just good and it's multiplayer related, yeah, you're going to pull in a lot of people there. But the one that I think is going to do it, and I think it's really going to put them over the top, it makes me wonder if the plan is for this to come out first half of next year, placing it in the current fiscal year, is Pokemon. Pokemon Winds and Waves. And my thought with that is the potential that they do a bundle with it. And Nintendo, I think, is starting to realize that these bundles work. I mean, they bundled, you see Pocopia with the Switch 2. I'm sure that's worked to sell units. And even if you go back to when the Switch 1 came out, the following year when Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee released, they did have a bundle for that. And I mean, I would look at that. I know people go back and forth on, well, it'd be a mainline new generation game, whatever. I don't think it necessarily matters as much if Nintendo thinks it can help the Switch 2 in its early days to move units at a higher price point. I think they'll go for it, and you would have a, I guess, limited edition somewhat. I mean, the Pikachu and Eevee, they had like different Joy-Con colors. They had what etchings on the dock. So I think Nintendo could do something like that with Pokemon Winds and Waves. I'd like to think that Nintendo understands the price still needs to get cheaper for the system. And unfortunately for them, I just don't think a Switch 2 Lite will be happening in the first year and a half or even 2 years of the system. Might be year 3 where we see that, and then maybe they can figure out a way to get the price down to, and it sounds weird because it's a Lite, but like $350 or $400. That, I mean, who knows where prices will be, in a few years, but that might be the low point in terms of pricing. But I do think Pokemon Winds and Waves will be like the big push for the Switch 2 in 2027 that would account for a number of these units. Now, keep in mind, units they produce in the fiscal year that we're in now might not all just be for this fiscal year, right? They could be having these systems put together say, setting up the next fiscal year, because there is a delay between making the system and then sending it out to stores and then selling it to a person. So it very well could be the situation of, sure, Winds and Waves comes out right at the end of the fiscal year in March, and this would just be more stock that will be available going into April or May to continue selling alongside of what should be a pretty substantial Pokemon release. Because I will admit, when I see the trailer for Winds and Waves, I do look at that and go, huh, that actually looks like a Pokemon game from the current generation. And look, the Pokemon hasn't exactly been up to snuff in the graphics category. This looks a bit better. This looks like I don't want to say caught me off guard a bit. I was pleasantly surprised and somewhat impressed by what Game Freak showed off, at least with some of the initial shots of the game. I'm cautiously optimistic after playing Scarlet and Violet. That was not a great experience. Better on the Switch too, but that's not necessarily the system that I bought the games for when it came out. Still, it's Pokemon. It's going to have that push. We see what's going on with Pokopia that then runs into Tomodachi Life, which has also been very strong. So think about Ocarina of Time Remake and Duskbloods, those, and then coming off of that, going into Pokemon. Yeah, that could be a massive holiday for Nintendo, and it would then make sense to go, yes, we need 20 million Switch 2 systems, even though the system starts at $500, because there's going to be a $550 bundle with Pokemon or with Duskbloods. I think Nintendo is going to leverage bundles a lot, especially in the holiday season, and even in more of the slow periods, maybe in the first quarter, say, of next year. I could see them tapping bundles for that as well. But let me know what you guys think about the idea that Nintendo could actually be lowballing with 16.5 million and maybe has their sights set legitimately on 20 million. And would Pokemon be the big catalyst that would push them over the top, say, in 2027, if indeed they are looking to release that thing in the first half of next year? Thanks, guys, for watching, and I'll see you next time.